I'm Andrea Beaty. I'm the author of the Questionnaire series, and I'm here today with the amazing illustrator of the Questionnaire series, David Roberts, who's showing up from London, England. Hi,
Hello,
David.
hello from England.
Hello. I'm in Chicago, so hello from Chicago. We're so excited to be able to talk with you guys today. Thank you for the marvelous letters. They were absolutely wonderful, and some of the illustrations in there. Oh, they made me so happy. Weren't they amazing, David?
Yeah, joyful. It was just such a joy to read your wonderful letters and hear all the things you've got to say, and also see these brilliant drawings that you've done of the characters. And each character has its own little characteristics. Did you notice? Even though you're drawing the same characters that I've drawn, you've got your own personality coming through in them, which is so lovely to see.
That's one of my favorite things about seeing art ever is that it's sort of like looking into a person's heart. You can just see things about them. And it's like they have their own voice, just the same way when in the letters, the way they write. Um, Everyone, you can tell they have their own personality. That's the
Yeah.
whole fun of it. Well, our friends have given us a lot of good questions that I would love to answer them. Shall we?
Yeah.
Let's do
Who are
some.
we talking to today?
Oh,
Is
I'm
this
so sorry. I'm so silly. This is Ms. Augustine's class
Hello,
students.
Miss Augustine, and your lovely class?
Yes.
Yeah. So, Miss Augustine's lovely class has sent us a list of questions, and I'm going to reply to some of them. We're both going to reply to some of them, and I'm going to ask Andrea your first question, and that is, Andrea, what inspired this story, and how long did it take to create?
Ooh, that's a good question. So
Mm.
I wrote Lila Greer Teacher of the Year because I was inspired by David's illustrations. And starting way back in our first book together, which was Iggy Peck, Architect, we got to see Lila when she was a little girl, and also as a teacher. And I've always been curious, what was her story, and also why did she wear that amazing bun? And so here's an Iggy Peck Architect, and we get to see her in this scene, which is set in Chicago, which David did because I live in Chicago, and that made me so happy. That was the first book we worked on together. So it took me, I would say, about 4 months to write the book.
Mm.
No, is that right? Yeah, about 4 months to write the book.
Yeah.
I had the idea before that, but then once I sat down and started to do it, it was about that long. Yeah,
Mm.
it can
Yeah.
take some time, even though it's not a very
Take
long book.
time. Yeah.
Yeah.
So,
So, oh,
next question.
yes.
Do kids give you ideas for books, Andrea?
Sometimes. So Iggy Peck was an example of that because my son loved to build things. And so I got the idea one day. I thought, what if? And that's always my questions that I start with is what if? What if there was a kid who was passionate about building things? And so I wanted to write a book. And then so I made him an architect because architects design and build wonderful things. Yeah, now my son never made a dirty diaper tower, but he did
Oh.
other things. So yeah, that's where the idea came from. Um,
Very
so
good.
David, how long does it take? Oh, look at that! Isn't that yes? It was all great until they realized those diapers weren't clean. Ooh,
Oh, yuck.
I love it. I like that illustration, David, because you made it so realistic that you could almost smell it, but you can't. It's not a stinky book. It's a wonderful book. David, how long does it take you to illustrate a book? And why are there so many kids in the book?
Well, it takes me about 6 months to illustrate one of these books from start to finish, which will be everything from when I very first read the story that Andrea sends me, and she just sends it to me, just written on a piece of paper as a story. And then what I do is I go through it and I make points in the story where I think, what's going to be the best thing to illustrate for this moment in the book, or where should the page turn be to make the most impact, to have like a big moment revealed or something like that. So that's quite a complicated part, so that takes a while. And then what I do then is I start sketching up my ideas because all the characters are already there because they appear in every book. I start to think about, well, what's their world? What does their world look like? And what details am I going to put in? So I start doing some sketches, and then I'll formulate a group of sketches and I send them off to the publisher and to Andrea. And then they have a look at them. If they've got any comments, they come back to me. And then when I do the artwork, I will that's when I will draw everything out onto the paper that I use to illustrate onto, which is called a watercolor paper. It's quite thick and it's very smooth to touch. It's called hot pressed watercolor paper. And so I do everything drawn on paper. I don't do anything on computers. And then once everything is drawn up and I'm happy with it, I send it all the way to America from the UK, and then it becomes the book. But my process takes about 6 months. But I'm not only working on this it's not every hour of every day for 6 months. It might be a week here, 3 weeks here, a month here, that sort of thing. It's on and off throughout that period of time.
Can I say something wonderful that I've always admired about your art? And you said something to me once. You said there are never any extras in your book, meaning there's never anybody who's random and has no purpose or is not a real person. You make each character like a real complete person, even though you may just show up one time. And what has happened now is that as we go from book to book, you leave little clues about that person's personality in the illustrations, and then my job is to be a detective and figure out who they are. So one of the things I always like to tell kids, so readers, listeners, friends, go and check out all the books together, because David tucks all kinds of secret things in the illustrations in the books. It's one of my favorites.
Yeah. And that's why this question said, why are there so many kids in the booth? And there's so many kids because in the very first story, Andrea wrote that there were 17 kids in the class. So I thought, well, I've got to draw 17 kids. And then I thought, well, every kid in that class is equally as important to every other kid in the class. So just because the story was about Iggy, for me, every child in that book had to be sort of thought about and realized. And so I had ideas about who each one of them would be when I was drawing them. And that's why we've got 17 kids in the classroom of each of the stories in Lee Legree's class.
And they're all wonderful. And we love them all.
We love them all.
We do. All right. What do we have? Oh, that's a good question. Oh, they're all good questions. Oh, here's one I'll take. Did you have a teacher like Miss Kern? And why is Lila so lonely? David, did you ever have a teacher like Miss Kern?
I had a lot of lovely teachers, actually. And I had teachers who sort of took notice. I was very quiet and very shy as a child, but I also liked being part of things, being included in stuff, but I would never push myself forward. So I had one teacher who noticed that, and she put me in the school play, and we were doing The Wizard of Oz. Wow. And I was so thrilled to be in the school play. I was like a sort of one of the characters in the background. I was an extra, but I was just so thrilled to be in that school play. And for me, who was very shy and would never have put my hand up to say, can I be in the play? She noticed. And so, yes, I had a teacher like Miss Kern.
That's such a powerful thing when a teacher notices someone. But I think that's true when a kid notices that someone else maybe is feeling lonely or feeling a little like they're struggling, just to reach out and give them a smile or just go stand by them or ask them to play or something. It's such a big deal.
Yeah.
I actually had a teacher like Miss Kern, and her name was Miss Kern, which is why this character. She was my fourth grade teacher. Yeah. And she was a little bit tall and a little bit stern. So I felt okay calling this teacher a little stern, because she was. And she was the teacher. Not everybody loved Miss Kern, but I did. I adored her. And I think it's because she taught me so much about language. And she was a person who wasn't very, very, laughy, and she wasn't, super funny or anything like that, but she really loved what she did. And she kind of saw me and we connected, and I adored her. So that's why the teacher is named Miss Kern.
Yeah, she
Yeah,
sounds great.
it was
Right,
great.
what do we have next?
Okay.
Andrea,
Yeah.
why did Miss Kern have so many erasers?
Oh, okay. So what happened was when Lila was a little girl and she moved to the other town, and she was very lonely. So because she has a lot of what ifs, she has anxiety, which means she worries about things and she sort of puts them in her heart and just frets and worries. And that's something that so many people have. I mean, everybody does sometimes, but for some people, it really is overwhelming. And so when she moved to the new town and she was really struggling, Miss Kern saw her and understood that, and understood that Lila just needed some space. And that so the teacher, Miss Kern, gave her a safe space to be, a quiet, safe space, which was her room at lunch. And one by one, she brought the other kids in so that Lila could get a very gentle introduction and sort of on her own terms get to know these students one by one. And what we don't see happening as a whole group is that at some point the teacher, Miss Curran, has all the kids in there. So there's a ton everybody's doing, but she sort of introduced that very slowly, one student at a time, so that it was a very natural thing. And it wasn't until Lila Greer becomes an adult and she's starting her job as a teacher and she goes in and she realizes, wait a minute, my teacher did this incredibly kind thing and she helped me fit in and she helped me feel at home by having all the kids there. And so that's why she realizes, holy cow, wait a minute, there wasn't one kid, one eraser, there were seven. I didn't count the kids.
17.
17. I should have known
17.
that. There were 17 erasers. Oh, I like that. So yeah, that's why.
That's lovely. Now, the next question is, what is the most favorite book you've worked on together? What's yours, Andrea?
That is really hard. Can I drop a hint here and say, actually, I think it's one that's happening in the future, but I can't say what it is. Am I right? Yeah, you're right. Oh, stay tuned, friends. But there's so many great ones. It's sort of like asking my favorite dessert. Every day I have a different answer.
Exactly.
Right? I have to say I love all the picture books, but I'm really into the chapter books right now. And I hope you guys will read these chapter books. They're really they really apply to this year where we're having an election here in the States. And this one's about voting, and this one's about sort of what can happen in your town and who gets to decide what snakes are in the zoo or if someone can ban them and things. And they're funny, and David did the funniest illustrations. So I'm right now like really all into these chapter books. So I hope you guys will read them because they're a hoot. David, what about you? Do you have a favorite?
I mean, as you say, it would be like choosing your favorite cake, which you should never have to choose your favorite cake. But if I was to choose just one that I've particularly enjoyed, I will say Aaron Slater Illustrator was a really special book for me, because in this book we talk about how Aaron has dyslexia and he finds reading and writing difficult. And I also have dyslexia. So when I was Aaron's age, I found reading, and still do actually now, and writing it would sort of put me off wanting to do it because it felt too hard, or it sort of, I didn't feel like I could do it. So I would find other things to do, and drawing was the thing that I would do to tell stories. And that's what Aaron does in this book, and that's why this book is quite special to me.
I love it. David, what edition is that? One of the cool things that happens.
Oh, yes, sorry. This is Japanese.
It's so beautiful, isn't it? So the book, I think 28 different languages around the world. And so it's a lovely thing that one day you answer the door and there's a delivery and there'll be a book from China or everywhere around the world. And they're so beautiful to look at. And also if you read Japanese or Chinese or any of the other languages.
Yeah. I went to Tokyo last year and I met our publisher who publishes this book in Tokyo, and they gave me this copy.
Oh, that's so beautiful. That is so beautiful. I love that.
Okay.
All right.
What's next? Oh, Andrea, Do
Yes,
you like Burger King?
I do
Who
like
asked this
burgers.
question? This is a good question.
This is a very good question.
Do
I do
you
like
like Burger King?
Yes, and I'll tell you what I like and why I like it. I like just their hamburger with some mustard and onions on it because it's like one of these skinny little hamburgers. And when I
Oh,
was a kid, there was a little hamburger restaurant, and the hamburgers are just like that. So when I eat their hamburgers, it reminds me of being a kid back home. Do
oh,
you
how
like Burger King? Do
well,
you have them?
yes, we do have Burger King. And when I was younger and I'd go shopping into our local town with my friends, we'd go to Burger King and I'd always have their spicy bean burger. I thought that was really
Hey,
lovely.
a spicy bean burger. I don't think we had spicy bean burgers here.
Was This was a British privilege.
This isn't that interesting that restaurants can be different even though it's a chain, just like the translations. Oh wow.
Yeah,
Now I want a
yeah.
spicy bean burger. That's
It was
wild.
good. It was
Was
good.
it?
Okay,
Oh,
what should we answer next? What's your
oh
favorite candy? That's another good question.
yes, that is a good question. I do like a malted milk ball. I always like a chocolate. Something involving chocolate
Mhm.
is pretty. I like that, and I also like a Snickers bar, something that's got a little salty, a little bit sweet. Yeah, that's where I'm
Mm.
going. What about you?
Well, it's very sad for me, this question. It makes me
Oh,
very
what?
sad because my favorite candy is only available in America and I can't buy it
Oh,
here in the UK. It's
what
called
is it?
See's milk chocolate candies. They're
Oh,
called
those are
See's,
good.
and I got some when I was in Los Angeles a couple of years ago, and I can't get them in the UK, so I've got
Oh,
to come back to America to buy my
yes.
favorite sweets.
Well, come on over. Come on over. We'll get you some chocolate, man.
Right. Last
Oh,
question from your classroom, Miss Augustine. And this, I think, has to be my favorite question I've ever
I think
been
it
asked.
is. I think it is. I'm going to read it to you. David, what is your favorite hairstyle?
Thank you for this question. Whoever asked this question, I've been waiting all my life to answer this question. Again, choosing a favorite hairstyle would be like choosing a favorite cake. It sort of changes, doesn't it, on a daily basis, depending on your personality. But I think if I'm talking about hairstyles that I see on other people, I'm going to say something big, a big beehive hairstyle, a huge big pile of hair on the top of her head that goes up high, high, high to the sky, like a skyscraper, big beehive. I like that hairstyle. I also like a hairstyle that's from the 1950s, 1960s. There's a hairstyle from the 1950s and 1960s, which was a quiff, which was like where your hair would come up at the front and go back on itself like this. And I gave that hairstyle to someone we know very well, Iggy Peck.
Yes,
He
yes.
has a very cool quiff. And one of the best things I ever saw written about Iggy Peck was when somebody compared his hairstyle to an aeroplane taking off.
Do you think
What's your
Iggy can
favorite
fly?
hairstyle?
My
Sorry.
favorite hair. I'm a fan of braids. I had very
Yes.
long hair for most of my life until
Yeah.
I don't know, about 10 years ago. And during the pandemic, it got very long again, and I loved putting it in braids or putting it this way or French braids. So I'm always a fan of braids. Yeah.
Yeah. I used to have when I had very long hair, I used to put my hair into two long plaits like that either side. I used to like that hairstyle.
Yeah.
That's a great question. Thank you
that.
for that question. That was
Yeah.
my favorite question ever.
And you know what? I think that question is really fits these books because you put so
Mm.
many details and you pay such attention to what people wear because you know all about fashion and you pay attention to how they look and their hair and things like that. So I think that's those are the details that really make the book sort of real for people. That was fun.
Oh, lovely. Thank you. Thank you
Yeah.
for all your lovely letters. We
Yes.
really enjoyed reading them.
Yes, that was lovely. Well, thank you. Keep reading lots and lots of books and asking lots of questions. We'll keep making books here and hopefully we'll get to hear from you again. Thank you all so much.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye.